Hey everybody, give you a second to join me here. This is my not as updated iPad device, so I've got a weird smoky effect, but hey, maybe that's appropriate for talking about such a Neptunian Plutonic topic. So we have the sun conjunct to the North Node today, so this is graduation day for many, many people on the path of emotional mastery. It's the alchemical journey, twin flames. Um, there's a lot to say about this topic. It's really complex, it's multi layered, and this path of mastery has been around forever. It's not something new. We started to hear about it in the 80s and the 90s. It started to become popular. It's been really bastardized as this romanticized excuse for maintaining abusive contacts or abusive relationships. This concept makes a lot of money, but there is truth to it. There are some journeys that are going to lead to inner union. There are many paths to inner union. Sometimes it can be grief that'll spark that. Sometimes it can be a spiritual experience. Sometimes it can be a personal breakthrough that comes out of nowhere. Sometimes it can be stress. Sometimes it can be meditation. Removing the obstacles of the ego over the course of time, eroding that over the course of time. Sometimes you can have these breakthroughs through sitting and turning inward, reflection. So there's a lot of ways that one can awaken. But with the alchemical journey, with twin flames, with divine counterparts, it's the relationship path to enlightenment. It's the path that teaches you the patience, the balance, the emotional mastery, the ways of being that build the capacities to maintain a healthy, balanced commitment. It puts you in a position where you get rid of your trauma so you can have a lasting, balanced, healthy relationship. So you get rid of ways of being, you get rid of feelings, you get rid of projections, you get rid of the shadow self that's keeping you from being able to see others as they are. Because you're taking back your projections, you're taking back your idea that there's somebody outside yourself that can soothe you. There's somebody outside yourself that can complete you. It's an illusion. And you have to give it time for yourself to break through. Because even if you know it's an illusion, you can't stop it, because this is one of those paths where your head is in the tiger's mouth. You ever heard that saying? I think it's a Zen saying or a Buddhist saying. That when that spiritual impulse arises, you're already cooked. Your head is already caught. in the tiger's mouth. That's what the twin flame journey, the alchemical journey, describes, is that you're already ready, you're already primed for some kind of breakthrough, some kind of spiritual breakthrough, spiritual mastery, emotional mastery. And it's going to come through an experience of recognizing yourself in another and mistaking it. You mistake yourself. And this whole journey, that's what you come around to, is you realize, oh, I was mistaken. It's a process of falling in love with yourself. Because you see in that other who's just a mirror. It doesn't have anything to do with them, other than they hold a lot of mirror neurons. And so they are a more intense reflection for your shadow self. We have this interplay of mirror neurons, and as one, alchemizes and does, the other responds. But the thing is that you will likely have several divine mirrors, several sacred mirrors, that the person that instigates, what we call the catalyst, twin flame, the instigator of this journey, typically that is not the person that you will end up with. You end up with yourself. Sometimes we'll end up with that catalyst, but you need to be prepared that as you're going through this, you'll have several people show up for you and show you the state of your growth. Because everybody that we get involved with, they're showing us where we are in our personal development when we get involved with them. And that's why you can outgrow people. You will likely outgrow your catalyst twin flame. Again, some people might end up with them, but it's very rare. Typically, what we end up with on the twin flame journey is somebody that has alchemized and can meet you where you are. And there can be some growth in the instigator of this journey. The person that hurts you so bad, you have that, intense attraction, and then there's a terrible terror, hurt. They'll do something that will cause a trigger. They trigger your worst suffering. Whatever that is, it's different for different people. Whatever it is, it needs to be felt, come up for clearing. And so that's what starts the psychological process. Is I've had an intense attraction, I've been hurt or rejected or ghosted, typically some kind of ghosting, in this back and forth. And the inner child wants to reach out to the source of that suffering to have it relieved. But it's an illusion, because the catalyst is usually, always, they are not in a place to soothe you. They are not a healthy choice. They are in hot and cold, weak player energy. So that's what's being alchemized and changed in the divine masculine, is weak, toxic, in and out, back and forth player energy. And in the divine feminine, and they're also alchemizing uh, unhealed feminine aspects of themselves. Both people are balancing both their masculine and feminine qualities. So the divine feminine is working on her toxic masculinity and her toxic femininity, and alchemizing that, bringing that into a balanced state of wholeness and completeness, being happy and good on your own as you are, and not feeling ever like you need to reach outside of yourself for anything. And so you don't crave or want or desire the catalyst anymore, because you see it. When you come through the journey completely, you see it for what it is. You see them for what they are. You just have to wait it out. You have to go through the process, because it's like a pack of firecrackers when this happens. It's a tear in the subconscious. And when one of those firecrackers lights, the rest of the pack is just, you can't stop it. You have to allow it to complete, because once that tear in the subconscious opens up, it's like a pocket of pus. It has to be given time to come out. It can't be repressed again. And so give it time, go through the process. You will heal. It's intense. It is the worst suffering you will ever experience. And the more that you see that person as the cause or really having anything to do with it, the more you're going to stay in the loop. You just have to look at it like, you know what? There's kind of a dunce, or they were overwhelmed, or they were whatever. Do not put your attention on them. It's not about them. They may change and alchemize given the amount of mirror neurons you have between the two of you. That may happen. It probably won't. Typically, the divine masculine stays in their immature, chasing masculinity, where it's about the pursuit. It's not about the enjoyment. It's not about love. It's about ego gratification. Both of you are coming out of that. Both of you, maybe they will, usually they don't. But the divine feminine or the divine masculine completes the journey. Sometimes the divine feminine doesn't. Sometimes the divine masculine will let go of the divine feminine because she ain't getting there. And you recognize that there is not going to be an alchemical match. But somebody does show up for you who is. Someone is provided for you who's gone through the journey and who is attracted to your healed aspects. You're attracted to their healed aspects. And you go into compassionate non-attachment. So it's a process of puking up your pain and your suffering. And then you come to this cleared place where you are in alignment with guidance that comes from your own self. You're not looking for that guidance from a partner that is looking to make you submit in toxic ways or in old world ways. We don't have submission in an alchemized relationship. It's not a hierarchy. That's of the old world. That's old world platonic relationships. We're expelling all of that and working through all of that. And yet the attachment to, materialistic tit for tat. What is the word? I know the word. Mercury is so retrograde, and I'm ruled by it. It's worse for me than anybody else. I just turn into an idiot during Mercury retrograde. Transactional relationships. We don't do that anymore. But we're not attracted to that anymore. You can't do that anymore when you've completed the twin flame journey. You've alchemized, because you're in a place where only unconditional love will do. You won't settle for less. It's just cheap. It's not interesting. It's not interesting. Whereas before, transactional, platonic, karmic relationships were riveting our attention, you will come out of that and it will actually be repellent, that kind of interaction. Because it's not, there's no pull. There's no, it's just not interesting. It doesn't offer you anything. And so only Tantra, sacred sexuality, an alchemized relationship will do. And two, the twin flame journey, once you really go through it, you have a righteous twin flame journey, an alchemical journey, you will go through a major ego death or series of ego deaths that has a very profound change on your sexuality. Because you will heal your root chakra, the sacral chakra. The sacral chakra between twin flames is what is unhealed. And so that's why you get that promiscuous player energy with the instigator of the journey. You both have that in you to some degree. Typically with the divine feminine, it's not the player promiscuity. We're dealing with like sexual trauma like I've had, or some kind of abuse, unhealed, unalchemized abuse. Both of you are. But with the divine feminine, or the one that's in the role of divine feminine, because this can happen between gay couples, this can happen to different genders. It's really about the the identification of what you are here. It's not about your junk. So we're healing what our suffering. We're healing what causes codependency, the inability to maintain a healthy, balanced, cooperative give and take in a relationship. So dominance and submission, cheating, plutonic tools, weak energy within us both is transmuted. And you come to a place where the hungry ghost within you, in the one that's healed, because keep in mind, divine feminines, your divine masculine is usually the instigator. He ain't gonna get there. He's not gonna get there. I know that's hard to hear. He's not gonna get there. He can't. He's incapable. You will come to see this when you come out of your delusion about what you thought you saw. You saw yourself. You saw what you look like in your wholeness. You think that he's going to complete you. He's the key to your completeness. You can't be soothed as something that's not capable of soothing you. You cannot be soothed by something that's toxic, immature, unbalanced. You cannot be soothed by something that was a mirror for your own unhealed aspects of yourself. So either that mirror heals, and usually it does not, accept it. You will move beyond it. I promise you. I promise you, you will outgrow it. Give it time. Eventually, you'll see them for what they are. The attraction will release. It will release. You won't have to force it. You just come into a place of total acceptance. And it's at that moment where you're in total acceptance of yourself that you're able to see. So the blinders come off and you're able to see, oh my God, never again. Never again. Never. And you will either, there's a few paths. You will either come into union with that twin flame. You will either come into a neutrality because you'll recognize that this person has a lot of good qualities. There's beautiful forgiveness there. You will come into what you cannot perceive in the beginning because you're so angry at them. You'll come into divine love and total appreciation for them, but you'll recognize this is not an alchemical match. And it's so confusing when you're dealing with the instigator of your twin flame because they're very much a mix of positive and negative qualities, and that makes it very, very hard to discern what you're dealing with. And you'll go back and forth. Is this a creep or a wonderful person? It's that dissonance within yourself because you are going back and forth between your light and your dark sides. And that's being reflected in your thinking about that person outside yourself. The black and white thinking, the yin and the yang. They're a mix of both, like everybody is. And you'll come to see that. They may not be for you, but you can love them anyway. And you'll come to be in a place of neutrality and forgiveness and taking your responsibility in things because you realize that they don't have any power. You're not attracted to them because they don't have any power. You don't want anything from them. They can't offer you anything in terms of a romantic relationship. They can offer you friendship. They can offer you release. But when you're at the end of your journey, if you do not come into union with the person that sparks that journey, you're in a frequency and you're in a balance and you're in a place of healing where you get something beyond your wildest dreams than your twin flame. Better. Because it's a match. It's a match for where you are. It's a match for how far you've come. And so, yeah, Charlotte, as we grow, we go through timeline shifts. Absolutely. Have you ever noticed that, every 6 months or 3 months or so, it has a very different mood than the previous time frame? Some people don't experience that because they're not growing. They're not shifting. But if you are, you will experience these frequent, sometimes rapid, when you're really growing fast, eras where you can look back and you're like, wow, that was a totally different mood setting. Those are subtle timeline shifts because it's a multiverse that we live in. This is not a universe, it's a multiverse. And there are all possibilities and aspects of self that are available to us. And you can shift between those. I will give a workshop on this. It happens with growth. It happens with frequency. Look at it like octaves in music. Because everything is just a reflection of everything else in nature. Let's look at octaves in music, where you come up, there's that one frequency, and it come up, there's another. We're not different. And given that there are so many possibilities and aspects of self all operating at the same time, we can choose between any of them. We have that power, the susceptile stuff here we're talking about. Septiles, the crack in the mortar of reality. They're not operational, until you come into a place of wholeness. And when you do come into a certain frequency, a certain state of being, that's alignment. You don't have all of these disparate notes going everywhere. That's distraction. That is not wholeness. That's not being in divine order. No, the 51 degree aspect, Charlotte, septile. Septiles work, they drive us crazy before we've come into our wholeness, until we've come into a certain frequency, and then they turn on in a different way, because every aspect has two sides. With septiles, you get the just like cyclical crazy making stuff. But when you come up into a certain way of making decisions, of thinking, of seeing, of perceiving, that's when your septile really turn on. And this is where you can shift beyond frequencies and timelines and dimensions. You become interdimensional. This is where you have access to portals, information. Septiles will make you psychic. You start to really surf the universe. That's what you do when you come into your septile phase of life. You surf the universe. You really break out of the matrix. So the price of the alchemical journey is your pain. It's your suffering. You have to pay with that. That means you give up your trump cards. You give up your currency with which we get things in a plutonic world. Your manipulation tactics. The suffering and pain that keeps us from doing this or that limits us, that keeps us out of things. Gives us reasons, excuses. You give up your excuses. You give up your resentment. Oh, that is the biggest. That's the biggest coin we have in our bank of karmic currency. It's the biggest one. You have to give that up. You can't keep those resentments going. Those are foundational stories of the survival being in survival mode, the survival aspects of ego. And both the divine feminine and the divine masculine, if the divine masculine completes the journey, ladies, those that identify as feminines, I'm telling you, they rarely do, but somebody else does, who's good for you. Both of you, whoever completes the journey, gives up being in survival mode. This is a good question, Rena. Why do they rarely complete the journey? Because you don't have any control over them. And that's one of the biggest lessons that the divine feminine learns. We're giving up control. We are learning to be in our feminine, receptive, accepting energy, which is not controlling. You're healing that divine masculine, that unhealed masculine part of yourself that wants to control somebody. Like, let that fucker go. Let him go. He's some other woman's problem now. That's how you need to be looking at your twin flame. Because almost always the person that sparks this journey is not healed and is in an immature emotional state of being. And it is their responsibility to heal that. It's not your business. But unhealed divine feminine, like, I'm going to heal that man. I'm going to make that man commit to me. It's not your business. He will heal if he chooses to, in his own goddamn time, if he wants to, and they rarely do. They want to be immature. They want to be a player. They want to have so many markers on their bedpost that it's nothing, it's whittled down to like a little beaver's toothpick. They're choosing it. And until they choose to heal, what are you doing? Get out of it! And realize that there are people around you that are so good for you. But we get so caught up in being riveted to that reflection of our own toxicity. It ain't never going to change. It's incapable most of the time. It can't do it. It's blind. It is a blind reflection. Take your attention away and let that person do whatever they're going to do. They are not your business. That we're like, I'm going to hang on until that divine masculine heals and comes to rescue me. Until you come out of that and you realize that people do things in their own time and for their own reasons. And the big key to your healing was totally giving up control, totally giving up hope, and realizing that it's a futile effort. It's an exercise in futility to try to control somebody else and heal somebody else that doesn't want healing. They have to choose it for themselves. Unless they decide they want to be different, it ain't gonna happen. It will never happen. And when you give up control and you heal that toxic masculine, what wants to chase within you and get something to prove yourself to yourself, you let that go, you can fall into real love. That's when you fall in real love with yourself. And that is reflected by the ability to truly, truly, truly love and be in compassionate non-attachment with another, which is what I have. So I've completely come through my journey and it feels peaceful. You'll get there. You will get there. You have to go through the suffering because healing is painful. That's why we avoid it. You have to go through pain and suffering to get there. But you will. So the divine masculine that does complete the journey has balanced, as my emperor has, the King of Swords, the King of Wands, thoughts, discernment, the mental aspect of life, come into sexual maturity, is a master of his own passions. Emotional maturity, is a master of his own emotions, balanced feeling. And come into material mastery. He's come out of poverty and out of debt and is a master of his own material wealth. And the four balanced kings equal the emperor. The emperor is the mature, sexually mature, emotionally mature, mentally mature, and materially mature king. And that's what the divine feminine deserves. The unhealed part of ourself before we've come into our total high priestess way of being is right there with the empress. The empress knows that she can only be with an emperor. She won't tolerate less. She isn't built for less. When we're in our immature state, when we have that eruption of the inner child, when we first are taking off on the journey, when we have that soul recognition with the divine mirror, the divine counterpart, the potential divine counterpart. The instigator of our journey, the initiator. We're seeing our own immature aspects of self reflected back. These are knights, you know, the Knight of Wands, Knight of Cups, Knight of Swords. These are our own player, teenage, immature energies. And as we heal and we come into divine guidance, we come into high priestess mode. Come out of seeing and falling in love with those unhealed, immature, incomplete parts of ourselves. You fall out of love with it. Because that's not, there's no value. It's not relevant to you anymore. It's not an open book. There's nothing that's transmuted. And so when you come to the end of it, and you can have, again, 1, 2, or more divine mirrors on your journey. But when you come to the end of it, and you're in your state of healedness and wholeness, who shows up for you is reflecting. And what you see, because there's only one. There's only one of us. There's only one. There's only one. When you talk to anybody else, you're just talking to yourself. And we decide to choose and invite into our life and dwell with the one that brings peace. The high priestess and the high priest. The high priest also channels because he's in his righteous divinity. He's a righteous man. He listens to his conscience, his heart. What he does is in tune with his soul. It sits right with his soul. And he chooses the high priestess because she sits right with his soul. The high priestess chooses the high priest because he sits right with her soul. You're both in a place of reflecting each other's divinity. And this is where we become soulmates. So the soulmate that you end up with may not be the twin flame that was the catalyst to your journey. Soulmate relationships are infinitely easier. Oh my God. A twin flame, that's a very complex, relationship. Simple, peaceful, healed, soulmates any day. Any day. But we can have a twin flame that does transmute into a soulmate. You're not so reflective right in your face of all your unhealed quality. It settles down, the charge comes out of it, the acceptance, the unconditional love. It equalizes. You come into friendship, compassionate, not attachment. and the soulmate bond can be present. So it's a deeply emotional, spiritual, psychological journey that you'll find yourself on. Because in the end, all you do is listen to what's good for you. You only want what's good for you. You hear what's good for you. You can feel what's good for you. Well, you couldn't before, or not completely before. This will clear out the cobwebs or the big boulders. Depends on what you got going on. What do you have going on? Does this ever happen to you? Have you ever had somebody that sparked the greatest healing in your life? I am going to have a support group that I'm putting together for people that are on the twin flame or alchemical journey, that I will invite my divine counterpart to join me in. You can see what it's like to be in the presence of a balanced, righteous, mature emperor. What that looks like, what that feels like. All right, everybody, that's what I got.